Good evening. With the quorum of the board present, Mr. Weaver online, is that correct? And 4 members here, we have a quorum. Call the meeting to order. We all stand or pledge to the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We're going to begin the evening with a couple of presentations. And you want to start with Mr. Gannon? You want to start off?
Thank you, Mr. Mannix. There's a few items before we get to the presentation. I want to take this opportunity to thank our school board of education. If you look in front of you, there is a Queensbury Spartans fleece, and I want to first off thank Mr. Keys because he was a strong helper in this process. So thank you, Mr. Keys, for that. But our board of education, I came in about 5:30 tonight and just thought about our board before, and I really wanted to get the sentiment out there. You know, I thought of characteristics that describe our board of education: caring, supportive, and Dr. Huntley's words, all in. Committed, dedicated. You bleed blue and gold, and you're true Spartans. I really have the utmost respect for what you do, the time you give, the commitments you make, being here on cold nights and being able to read emails from me at all hours and just being so supportive of our school district. We couldn't ask for a better board of education. We're thankful. Our administrative team knows we've got your support, and that means a lot when you're working through a crisis, a pandemic like we are right now. And I couldn't be more thankful. So with all my heart, the New York State School Board Week is the 19th through the 23rd, but this is in recognition of that. Please, feel free to wear them to any meeting you'd like. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. So thank you for all you do. Appreciate it. Also, on the table, you'll see a special thanks to Dan and Tim, as well as Amy and Elizabeth for the 2 weeks. We did complete what we set out to do, and that was the new board member information packet. There's a copy of it, even though I know it doesn't apply to everyone, just so you can see that that's complete, and a handbook for school operating procedures. So Dan and Tim, thank you. Thank you to Amy and Elizabeth for all their hard work. Those are considered complete and done. So if you find a mistake in them, please feel free, but we did proof them several times, and we're really happy. So each year, if a new board member comes, which I hope you all choose to stay, but they would get this, and that handbook can be a reference guide for anybody if they need or have questions. So we're really happy to have those two complete. So special thanks to both Dan and Tim for that. And then I wanted to, before the first presentation, I want to thank our Queensbury community. Last week, we deployed 891 Chromebooks. John Luthringer and his crew, and Gwen Kosh and Jessica Rossetti, our teaching staff, our transportation department, everybody joined forces. 891 Chromebooks were deployed quickly. 3,010 meals were delivered in 1 week by our food service and our transportation department. These times, our group just reacts. They know what to do. We've got a team in place, our teaching staff, our support staff, transportation, food service, administrative team just know what to do. And our Queensbury community, they stay with us through thick and thin. And we could not be more proud right now to announce today was a really good day. Our students were back. They were smiling. Our families were smiling. That line of cars was around the bend at QES again. And you can start to see those little ones getting out. I went in every kindergarten classroom this afternoon, and what a feeling that was. Denise and I visited all the kindergartens. and got a chance to really see how happy they are to be back and how much they need us. So special thanks to all of you for your hard work, and we're gonna keep the doors continually open, and we can't wait to welcome the boys and girls and their families tomorrow. But one thing that the COVID has done at our elementary and 4-5 level, we used to have a strong connection with families, but when I was talking with Jessica Rossetti this week, actually last week, the amount of face-to-face contact we're having with parents as they're dropping off kids and the relationships that have been built, and specifically at the K-5, K-8 levels, and now 9-12 behind the high school, we know the parents and they know us. And they trust us, just like the transportation department when they're picking up students. So this, really, the amount of traffic and the amount of people that are coming in, we're getting to know them on a first name basis, and just recognizing them right away, and it really has made for a really strong partnership. So we're thankful for that. So thank you, Mr. Mannix. Under our first presentation, sorry, go ahead, absolutely.
This is our first meeting back. Sherry, welcome back. Sorry I didn't say that earlier. It's nice to see you again. I hope you're doing well.
Yes,
And,
nice to be back.
Good. Are you back to full time or part time?
Full time.
Good.
Right in the.
Great to have you back.
Yes, thank
So,
you.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good, thank you. Thank you very much. So with that said, our first presentation, I'm gonna ask Denise to give me a hand with this. A few years ago, when Jessica moved from the 4-5 building to the elementary school, she realized the complexities of 4 grades. And at that point in time, one of the challenges that she and her 3rd grade and the elementary staff took on, as you know, the Board of Education goals, we work towards our students continually striving forward, achieving higher and higher each year. We've never accepted complacency, and neither have our teachers or our students. So we were really, really excited. This next award is based off of our assessment results in the 3rd grade, and Jessica and her staff did an outstanding job. And it's not just the 3rd grade teachers. That's the year where they're given the assessment. It starts really at the preschool level and in the homes. But then kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and then up to 3rd. And we were sent by New York State and acknowledged that QES was a school of recognition. So Mrs. Trollstra, do you mind doing the honors?
Thank you, Mr. Gannon. Good evening, Board of Education. This truly is an honor, and I'm happy to present Mrs. Rossetti with this certificate. Recognition schools really represent an exemplary school. They represent only 13% of schools, and out of 582 schools, Queensbury Elementary School was recognized. And Mrs. Rossetti and her team, and the team being the administration, the students, the faculty, the staff, and the parents, because along with this award requires a 95% participation rate for the assessments. So it truly was a team effort. And in those assessments, they did an outstanding job across all subgroups. So it really represents true growth and academic achievement. So I'd like to present Mrs. Rossetti with this award from New York State. Congratulations. And here is the letter from New York State. Congratulations.
One whole award. So thank you so much for all you do and being on the board. And please thank all your staff and teachers and everyone. I'm sure you will. But excellent. Moving on to the next presentation, Mr. Whitmore with something from UConnect.
So it's nice to take a minute when we have to acknowledge State Week. And back in March, right as we were closing down, we had received an email that we had won the Utica National Safety Award. We gotten this for several years in a row. Unity National is our insurance carrier. We work with Adirondack Trust Insurance to provide. We received the award. It is the 2020 School Safety Excellence Award, the titanium level with honors. A lot of work went into this award on a day-to-day basis, and also in terms of working with you to go through the application process in terms of safety checklists, certain cleanings, and certain other safety functions that both buildings, ground, and instructional have. So I wanted to share this with the board and thank everyone involved.
Thank you, Mr. Whittemore. I've been on the board, I think, 8 years now. I think we won it just about every year. So it really is a testament to everything that the staff does, both in the buildings and the administration, and keeping the school grounds and students and everyone that's here in a safe position. So thanks, Mr. Whittemore. And another presentation we have regarding some winter athletics. So Mr. Keys and Mr. Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mannix. So believe it or not, we're at a point in time where the discussion of winter athletics has come up at the Section 2 level, the superintendent's level, and we have several decisions to make coming up. And along with that, the section has asked us to give them information in the near future, which Mr. Keys will talk about. So we've put together, or Mr. Keys has put together in a format tonight, an explanation and thoughts, and then after that, we'd like to have some discussion around the topic. So, Mr. Keys, take over, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gannon. Thank you, Board of Education. Apparently, we've run out of awards tonight, so I'll just present. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted I had a different header on here, but that new logo and brand looks so nice, I had to make sure that I displayed it here for everyone to see this evening. But the purpose for tonight's, am I doing this wrong, Mr. Luthringer? Is to provide the Board of Education with information about the potential winter sports season for 2020-2021. Oh, okay. John said that would pick me up. But, okay. But anyway, some current information I would like to share with everyone, and in understanding the position that everyone is in terms of trying to make decisions based on participation in extracurricular activities, given the time that we're living in with the pandemic. They're very difficult decisions. There are no textbooks that we can go and find the ultimate answer in any of this. We ultimately are making decisions based on the best information that we have. So I thought it was really imperative to share what information we do have currently. We know that the New York State Public High School Athletic Association has moved all of the high-risk fall sports to what they're calling the Fall Season 2, which is March 1st, and that there are no NISFA state championships or Section 2 championships being held this fall. Our Foothills Council made a decision to play only fall season low-risk sports. The moderate and high risks were moved to the Fall Season 2. Not every Section 2 school had made that decision or league has made that decision. However, we made that decision based on what we felt most comfortable with at the time. We know that the New York State Department of Health has not given us approval to participate in high-risk sports at this time. We're awaiting further guidance from the Department of Health as to whether or not they are going to allow that. We know that the NISFA state championships for this winter and spring have not been canceled as of to date. And at our most recent Section 2 Athletic Council meeting, which consisted of our 70-plus schools in Section 2, I spoke up on behalf of our district and myself, frankly, to put a little bit of pressure on Section 2, and hopefully that Section 2 puts a little bit more pressure on NISFA to make a decision earlier than the decision they made this fall. I really felt like they put our local districts and our leagues in a real difficult spot about a week and a half prior to the start of the season, making a final determination that it's at the local level's discretion as to whether or not athletics were going to happen this fall. So we're looking for an answer from Section 2 or NISFA as early as the first week of November for the end of November. Give us a month to really plan accordingly. So Section 2 has asked that we bring this to our district and ask these really important questions. So what sports are we willing to play if the winter sports season were to begin on November 30th? They moved that date, as I mentioned, from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. And the January 4th date, if we were to ask that same question to January 4th, that was the original date for winter sports if we were to go to a condensed season, January 4th being the start of winter sports. Which start date do we prefer? And what should be the priority for our winter sports season? Should it be league level play? Should it be sectional level play? Should it be state level play? And then how should sectionals be run? If we do conduct sectional play, our section is looking for insight into whether or not we should hold a normal sectional season or if we should move to a more condensed version of a sectional championship. So I have processed a lot of information and am making a recommendation to the superintendent in which Mr. Gannon would like to obtain feedback regarding, but we need to settle on something that we feel everyone can support. We might not always be in full agreement to the extent of which these decisions are made, but in the end, is it something that everyone feels like they can support and that can be done in a safe manner in supporting of our kids? Low to moderate risk sports being in the winter, boys swimming and diving, Nordic skiing, alpine skiing, and bowling. Bowling technically doesn't hold a classification of low or moderate. I'm not quite sure why, but it will fall into this category without having a condition placed next to it. So my recommendation would be to provide these level sports for the winter sports season starting on November 30th, but I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation. But we still need to await NISFA and Section 2's decision on whether or not postseason play is going to occur for the winter sports season. My recommendation to the superintendent for high-risk sports, which include basketball, both boys and girls, wrestling, cheer, ice hockey, would be the January 4th start date. As I mentioned before, we still need the Department of Health approval. What guidance would we need to be followed? Additional guidance made to the youth sports and recreational sports would have to be updated to include high-risk sports, but we would need to see that guidance from the Department of Health or the governor's office. We would need to assess the situation at that time. In other words, what's the climate of New York State, our region, in relation to the infection rate? And priority should be to play league first, then postseason possibilities or potential. But I think for us, the main priority would provide our student athletes an opportunity to participate in their respective sports, even if that is only at the league level. We understand that some of these sports will be more challenging than others. I'm a wrestling person. That's my background. I fully understand the challenges that are going to be accompanied with the sport of wrestling in comparison to maybe some other sports that I think wrestling is probably the contact sport of all contact sports. So that poses some challenges. So by no means is this a all or nothing. I think we have to compartmentalize a little bit at times and think about one sport versus the other, which is difficult to do. But when it comes to which start date that we prefer, I prefer a progression. We've performed or are currently performing low risk level sports. I think by November 30th, I think it would be a logical progression to move to those low to moderate risk sports, being the ones that I've already listed, with January 4th being further down the line, that if things were to progress and things were successful, could you ultimately end up pursuing your higher risk sports? I think that's a logical progression. The progression were to continue into the fall season 2, which would be March 1st, with our high risk sports from the fall that got moved there. So I think before we run, we need to walk, maybe need to jog a little bit before we sprint. So I think those progressions make sense. However, when you look at the overall start date for the winter sports, I think either date really works, but it really is going to depend on the NISFA and the Section 2 decision as to whether or not they are going to host postseason championships. If they are not, I've always said for years, I thought that the winter sports season was too long to begin with. I feel like we could start a little bit later than January 30th if need be. Oftentimes the sports that we're talking about, Nordic skiing and alpine, they really struggle in November with the weather conditions that are most conducive to their sport. So waiting a little bit isn't necessarily going to be a bad thing there, and maybe give our student athletes a little bit more of a break between those who participated in the fall and those who are going to participate in the winter. However, I would like to see that progression. So if I had my druthers starting November 30th with our low and moderate risk sports, and then eventually moving into January 4th with a high risk, with a lot of conditions. And we can't make that decision right now. We understand that. Once again, I think the priority when it comes to what type of play we would be competing at, our Foothills Council only is one. One of the things that I was very impressed with our league this past fall was everybody got on the same page. Everyone was playing by the same set of rules, from the screening to the playing with masks to participating, maintaining distance. We're the spectators, all aspects of sport that we were posed to, or the challenges that we were given to try and rectify. Everybody got on the same page and we were consistent. We didn't have to worry about going to a visiting school and having them conducting business completely differently. There was a lot of uniformity to that. Maybe we could progress to Foothills Council play with some local non-league competition as a possibility. That would be the next progression. Section 2 championships in a condensed version, Section 2 championships in the regular format, which is a little more expanded, and then on to the NISFA championships. And once again, maybe the sport and the makeup of that sport and how it's performed could dictate to what degree we ultimately pursue one of these progressions. But once again, the sport, the climate, the inherited risk of the sport, and the fact that one's indoors versus outdoors, they all play a factor in to what degree you're going to participate. Some of the factors to consider, certainly student safety and keeping school open to in-person instruction is a huge priority for us, the number one priority. And we want to make sure that we're able to maintain that in all aspects. But we also understand that student engagement and participation in these types of activities, all extracurricular activities, provide a certain physical and mental health component to our students that are really, really important. I also feel like there needs to be a reacclimation to sport. If we wait to the end of November, our students will have gone 8 months without being in front of our coaches. And there's a lot of detraining that happens at that point. And so I do feel strongly that there is a need for preseason training that would need to happen prior to November 30th, that I would like to approach with a lot of caution, a controlled environment, small groups, but to provide opportunities for students to get reacclimated to the rigors of training. I think one of the things a lot of our professional sports teams and even some of our college teams have seen this fall is going from a period of time where they've detrained to a time of intense competition increases the risk of injury. And the last thing that we need when students are dealing with the grief of not having the opportunity to play is to become injured as soon as they do have the opportunity to play. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of our student athletes from a physical standpoint as well. Sports are occurring outside of our school. We know that. It's happening right now, and those students are coming into our school every day. I think I've mentioned to members of the board before that I feel much more confident in our teachers and our coaches coordinating and running these activities than someone from the outside. I want to be able to control the narrative as much as possible and have the people who are trained have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, professional certifications, working with our student athletes to provide a safe environment in which they're abiding by the rules set forth by the state and very similar to the operation of our school on a day-to-day basis, not some other outside, looser circumstance. So that's something to consider. Review how our moderate risk sports went this fall. I think we'll have a good sampling of school districts and leagues that did participate in moderate risk sports this fall, and we need to review that and see how successful it was and what challenges or issues they had to deal with throughout their season. High-risk sports are certainly contingent on the release of additional guidance and approval, so we can't make that judgment right now, obviously, and then continue to review our current safety procedures to see that things are working appropriately. Being also the district's COVID administrator, I'm thankful to be able to say, and I'll knock on wood, that of the cases that we've dealt with within our district, we have not had a confirmed case come from exposure while here at school from another confirmed case. That tells me that our safety procedures are working properly. Once again, there's nothing is going to work 100% foolproof all the time, and there are no guarantees. We understand that, but we feel like a lot of the things that we have designed and collaborated with our local Department of Health are working properly and have certainly contributed to mitigating any risk of potential spread. There is a difference between risk of contracting the virus from somebody else versus risk of potential quarantine due to a possible exposure based on different things too. And it's really important to kind of differentiate that I feel, given our environment and what school is, your risk of being impacted through potential exposure is certainly greater than, I think, your risk of actually contracting the virus. It's been a small sampling so far, so it's hard to really project that out over a long course of time. But at that point, I'll leave it up for any questions that you might have or any discussion that you wish to have at this point regarding the information I was able to present tonight. Thank you.
What? Questions? Questions and discussion now.
Board members, any questions?
Hey, Rich.
Yes.
Tim Weaver. A lot of the different options that you had put up is going to have a lot to do with the majority of other schools and what they're going to want to do as far as forming the league to be able to participate. I mean, we can have our ideals and what we want to do, but if the alignment doesn't come with the majority of the rest of the Foothills Council, then it's going to be a challenge, correct?
Absolutely. And I think right now the section is looking to obtain each individual district's position on this and weighing that when making their decision, and how that will ultimately affect the overall section, how it may impact the state, as well as back down to each of the league member schools within Section 2. So our position is one of 70 plus positions within Section 2 that are going to be taken into consideration when Section 2 ultimately makes their final decisions.
Yeah, and Tim, I'd like to add to that. You're right. There'll be 10 superintendents on the Foothills Council discussion, and I'm one of 10. So, but last time, when we had a discussion with the superintendents, it's really nice to know where your Board of Education stands going into this discussion. And I can tell you that Rich and I went through today. Swimming only involves a few of the school districts. It involves, I think, 4 different school districts in our league out of the 10. So that's not as many people. And one thing that we've seen, the reason that we're looking at swimming as kind of an additional discussion point is that the Foothills Council, we're not sure where everybody stands. I've had some preliminary discussions with other superintendents, but the Suburban Council ran swimming this fall, and they did it virtually. And so that was an interesting concept. I don't know, Rich, if you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, the length of everyone's pool is the same, and as opposed to trying to travel and bring people to other schools to compete against them, they kind of ran it like a time trial for each meet, in which one official went to each school instead of two officials going to one at each school. They ran their events, they submitted their times, they disaggregated all the data and came up with the results for the meet. So it was able to do it in a more controlled environment, but still having the student athletes have that opportunity to compete, knowing that they were competing against the times of students in another district. So that virtual meet seemed to be working out fairly well in section 2.
Has there been a discussion about doing that for girls? Wasn't that?
The girls are now. That's what's happening with the girls. We could do the same with the boys in the winter. Yep.
Our girls too, or was that one of the ones that I don't remember? Our girls.
So the Foils Council made a decision to move girls swimming to fall season 2, which would be March.
But the girls from the Suburban Council. Yep.
I was just wondering how the current fall sports are going.
Well, we were on a week pause, 1 week into getting up and running, so we resumed today. We have all away meets this week. It just worked out that way. But from what I gathered, the students were in good spirits today, excited to be back in their respective sports, and the coaches were great. They're super excited to see them and get back to work. So we got a full slate of those three sports happening this week.
I have a question, Rich. What really interests me and what concerns me is the decondition of our athletes, like you said before. We don't have to wait for other schools to set up a program in order to start training our athletes and get them ready for sports. Do you have any ideas of how we can do that starting soon?
Well, as a matter of fact, I sat down with John Martin, our strength and conditioning coach, as well as with Mr. Gannon, and we were slated to reinstitute that training, off-season training for a lot of our athletes as early as this week, up until our district's recent events. And so we put it on pause again with hopes that we at some point here will be able to kind of renormalize and then start to implement that here. I personally feel like we could be up and running in a week or two if need be. Like I said, small groups, really controlled environment, half-hour sessions, working with individual students, transitioning them out, having an opportunity to clean the facility before the next group transitions in. I think we can do this safely. It's going to come down to the level of comfort that we have at the time to be able to start doing this. It's an extracurricular activity, so it's going to happen after the regular operating hours, and making sure that we coordinate that with our custodial staff, that they have an opportunity to properly clean it after the last session before the next day.
Thank you.
When John Martin met with Rich first, and then they set up a meeting with me, John had asked if he could start working with groups of between 10 and 15 students, physically distant, just body weight without lifting right now, just starting to outside. He talked about wanting groups with a half an hour, rotating kids in and out, so there's a 15-minute segment. He could do at least 3 segments a day. He thought he could see 45 kids in a day, 15-minute clip with 15-minute breaks. And he wanted to do that 5 days a week to start the training process back. And then when we took a pause as a district, we just, if we can't keep academics going, we certainly can't do that. So, but John was ready, felt like he could do it safely, had a strong plan in place. Bob Jones is available to be there with him. Rich felt strongly that we need to start reconditioning our athletes at some point. So it's certainly there. We've talked about it, but we hadn't made a move on it. I had to talk to the Board of Education as well. I felt the conversation would go here at this level first before.
The team of staff that we have in place to oversee that is outstanding. John is outstanding in his thoughts. Bob Jones and his contributions, safety always being a huge priority in all aspects of what we do. But to have that opportunity to obtain the physical advantages of training, but to couple that with the psychological and the mental health aspect of it, I think it could do a wonder for our student athletes. And I think they're looking for something to do. Right now, we, as you mentioned, Fran, we can conduct off-season workouts. We have the authority to do that right now. We have a plan in place where the conditioning, any type of cardiovascular work would be conducted outside. Other aspects of it in the gym with further spacing, and then smaller groups even when you transition into the weight room, which would be a few weeks away from anything that we would do with our kids anyhow. Working up those logical progressions, mostly working on stability and mobility and flexibility before we move into any type of strength training. And with our current athletes having a condensed schedule right now, I think there's a big emphasis on recovery. For our cross-country runners who could potentially be running anywhere from 2 to 3 races in a week with a condensed schedule, or making up a week. We've already tried to coordinate with other schools to make a tri-meet or a quad meet where you run once and it counts 2 times against other schools in their scoring to reduce the number of competitions that we have in a week, so we don't run into a situation where students overtrain and get injured. We're very cognizant of that, and I feel strongly that we can do it safely. We got the right pieces in place. We have a phenomenal facility and accommodations to go along with the right people in charge of it. So I'm pleased with where we're at.
I understand this isn't necessarily athletics, but what is the status of other extracurriculars? Have decisions been made on things like music?
Okay, Amy. So on tonight's agenda, as I talked to the Board of Education about, so tonight we'll see we have under actually item C on the educational agenda, we have the class of 2021 advisors. We need them to advise the class. They're graduating, and there's a lot to do for our seniors. We also have the arts. So our chamber ensemble would be starting, and they would be in the blue gym in the gymnasium spaced out. We actually, when I met with the arts, as I talked to the Board of Education about, they had to meet with Bob Jones and set up a plan. And Bob Jones had to go through every detail with them about entering the building and exiting the building, spacing in the blue gym for their practice. Along with that, Matt Mullins madrigals will be starting up. So there are 22 madrigals. He talked to me about them today. He actually took me through his plan, but also Bob Jones sat and went through every detail with Matt Mullins. And then the jazz band, Jim Sorrello. So all 3 arts that we offer here would be starting. There would be 1 night a week, and they'll be on opposite nights. So they'll only do 1 group here at once. In the blue gym, they'll come in through the back door, they'll follow all safety protocols. And the most we'll have at once is 22 students. That's the most. And they'll be spaced out in the blue gym. So we'll do that 1 night a week. And they wanted to start that yesterday. But that's on tonight's agenda. And so we did have our media production club start up as well. It made sense. I met with Mrs. Switzer and we met with Mrs. Bartoli. And she's actually talked about, she's training students. She's doing a morning show at UHS, but she's also going to film the athletic events that are at home so that way we can stream them to our that. So that made sense. We also wanted our National Honor Societies to start up all virtually, but our students, we did not want them penalized when they're applying to colleges right now and having that on their application and their transcripts. So our art, our Spanish, and our regular NHS are all starting. And then yearbook takes all year to put the yearbook together. It is routine what's produced. And those, Colleen, Amanda, and Pam do an amazing job at the high school. And at the middle school, we were really, to try and keep all of our Chromebook grades in line. John had come, he had asked if Tyler, Terry, and his crew could start working the help desk at the middle school and fixing the Chromebooks and keeping them. It's such a support and it's so needed. And then obviously the middle school yearbooks would be starting up. And at the 4 or 5, the memory book would be starting up as their yearbook. And the same thing at the elementary level. So we want to make sure their memories are taken care of and they're intact. They end up in our libraries like they have for years. And so that's what we kind of agreed to start up at this point in time. So we are starting up with caution and slow, and we'll evaluate. And then John Martin has been the only other piece that I've considered, but I haven't talked with the board about whether or not we would allow 15 students for half-hour workouts. I was interested in the topic, and then we took a pause as a district, put it on the shelf for a little bit. Yeah, of course.
Any other questions for Rich? I had a comment. What you talked about with the preseason training was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and Fran's question as well. Not only do you think you get a chance to have the students start participating in something they love to do with the preseason training and the athletic and physical aspect of it, but it certainly brings, as far as I'm concerned, a level of discipline to the students to learn the protocols that are going to be necessary to compete if they do get an opportunity to compete. That they'll also have that set of discipline training, not only from the coaches and the staff, but from the COVID protection aspect. They'll be learning that right throughout the next few weeks. So there is going to be a winter season. I think it's more important than ever that we certainly endeavor to have some preseason training, and not only for the physical aspect, for everything else it does for the students and the athletes.
Dan, you bring up a great point, and one of the biggest challenges that we have as a district from dealing with this pandemic is establishing the culture of safety at all times. And I protect you, you protect me. It would be great to practice those same ideals in an extracurricular type environment, knowing that in order for this to be successful, you have to practice it with fidelity. You have to do it 100% of the time, all the time, and you can't be lax in it. And when students understand that something that is of such value to them, it's imperative that this continue to happen this way in order for them to still be able to do that. That's really important, and I think that can carry back over into our school setting as well. Is maintaining those good practices through the extracurricular activity regarding safety.
And I just mentioned being a student, but a student reached out to me with an email to the president website, made a very mature, well-reasoned, I want to say argument, but presentation as to why a couple of clubs be considered to be added to the list we've had. It makes a lot of sense. I believe Damien and Tyler meet with the student and talk about those clubs. I assured the student my reply that it's something we consider very important, that we constantly reevaluating these opportunities that we provide for the students as a board. And so I'm hoping that it can work out for the student in this clubs. But it just goes to show that I think the level of maturity and quality in the students that we have certainly taking this all in stride and putting their best forward to not only be safe, but to continue these things that
does some clubs. And this is great. This is a few of them. So, we'll just be really interested in knowing kind of where that's going moving forward. Because I think that there's, I guess, a level of consistency that, they're already accustomed to being in school and classroom following protocols, right? So it's just an extension of their day, which I know is oversimplified. I totally appreciate everything that goes into keeping kids safe. I don't, need to minimize that, but I think it seems how important it is. So I'd be really interested. I'm looking forward to hear more on that.
Yeah, I've talked with the principals a lot, and I've said January 1st is really the next checkpoint for me. Seems like a ways off at this point in time, and we'll be evaluating. But right now, I wanted to start off to make sure we were successful with what we have. But I can always reevaluate that too. I'm meeting with a few students, and sometimes Mr. Spitzer and I met with a student, a couple of weeks ago, and it was hard. He was smiling with the storm, and he was really hoping we were going to say yes at the end of it. And we said to him, we're gonna wait till January 1st to start up more things. I want to see how the next few weeks go. I want to make sure that the academics, still that they're the #1 priority, keeping the kids in our building. But I certainly I'm open to moving forward a little bit quicker. But I really would like to know if there's anything else. We've got John Martin's talked to us, and I don't know how the board feels. And then Rich had that proposal to me. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking for, if anybody else had any questions on any of these topics, any more information, anything.
I don't have any questions. I think it was well presented. And I think at this point in time, really, who knows how it's all going to play out. We got to have something in place. I'm all in favor of moving forward with it.
I think Reggie presented plenty of options for us to go forward with small steps at first, that if we're permitted and we have the protocols and the permission from Department of Health, etc., we might have an opportunity to go forward, but obviously things change as they rapidly do. So we'll just keep an eye on things, but with the eye of going forward at your discretion. I think it's a good plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll along with the rest of the meeting, business items. Mr. Whittemore.
Recommended the board for business item A. Motion to approve the following resolution related to the district's tax circular reserve as presented.
Can I have a motion, please, for business item A? Motion for Amy. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Anna. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Before you take the vote, Dr. Shea.
No. Okay. Mr. Weaver's on. Any other? I didn't see any other board members come on. Did they, John? Is there a roll call or just a motion? So is it voice vote or roll call?
No.
Voice vote. Okay, with no discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? With motion carries 5-0. With motion.
Recommended the board approve business consent items B through Y.
Okay, can I get a motion on?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion, the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries. Educational items, Mr. Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mannix. I recommend the board move to approve action item A, the motion to approve the attached district comprehensive improvement plan.
Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second, please. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carried.
I recommend the board move to approve educational consent items B through I.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's it, right? Board committee reports, policy, I think, did you have a virtual meeting? Adrian, policy? No, okay. The facilities committee had a meeting, last week. Tim, you wanna mention anything from that meeting?
Sure. We had taken a tour of the high school. The auditorium is absolutely stunning. The color scheme of the seats, the walls, the stage, the new flooring, curtains, everything's amazing. Which I was told that it would be handed back to us today. Is that correct, Mr. Gannon?
Yes, our first group will be going in tomorrow. So yes, we got turned over today.
Okay. So that's exciting. We also took a tour down to the cafeteria and saw a little bit of progress on the new Q Cafe. The plumbing, the electrical was being run, and that will move along at a quick pace, and hopefully by, I believe, if I remember correctly, the end of the month, maybe around the 30th. So that will be a nice addition for the students, for after school during the lunch area, the lunchtime, after school activities. And that'll be a nice addition to the cafeteria, the Q Cafe. Anything I'm missing, Dan?
We got to see, the new boilers in place.
That's right. Yep.
Very exciting. The, one boiler is being reconditioned, the other two are being wired for operation. So we have the one shoulder boiler still working, so there's heat and ice going through.
Yeah.
Great. So, but they're beautiful. Then the other one will be reconditioned and or set up to be reconditioned, and we'll be back to full capacity. So it's worked out well and been on time. So that was good news. Any other committees? How about board member comments? Mr. Weaver, anything?
I do not.
There's some informational items to be aware of. If anyone other than myself is going to be participating in the NISBA convention, starts next Tuesday. Different events and sessions run through the weekend, or through Friday anyways. And audit committee, I would point out on our November 9th audit committee that our board meeting on November 9th will start with the audit committee at 6 p.m. That's typically in the media center. Will that be here or in the media center? Being here in the Queensbury room, So if you can mark your calendars and make it, it's a very important discussion that we have with the auditors. And then we'll follow that with the regular board meeting in November. Transportation Recognition Day coming up October 21st. So, Jared. And I think that's it. Anything else, Mr. Gannon?
We did have our administrative recognition too, and we did, just so you know, Amy, Scott, myself, and Denise, we wrote a letter to each administrator thanking them and personalized it, and it went in their personnel file. And just so you know, just about how thankful we were for how they opened school and all the work they did. We also had lunch, Josh and I prepared lunch, we can't forget about that. We did have some of the chocolate souffle or whatever it was, that everyone had here. It was still just as good as the last time. And so we did have that, but our administrative team, their administrative recognition day was last week, and we're just a great team to work with. I'm very thankful for all of them, and they have a nice letter in their file, which I know they know which sentences I wrote. So they can see my words right on the page. But thank you to Amy, Denise, Scott, for our teamwork on that, and making sure that they're recognized for all their hard work. Thank you.
We will be having a workshop, correct? Budget, whether it is budget. So we want a workshop on the 26th. That'll be important as well. So you can mark your calendars accordingly. That'd be great. Nothing else to come before the board. No executive session, correct? They can get a motion to. So moved. Yeah. Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Everyone, thanks for tuning in online. Thank you very much. We'll see you in a month.